In trading, knowledge is power, and lack of knowledge in what you're doing can be costly, very costly. So you need a solid foundation of quality market education. Whether you're new to trading or a seasoned veteran looking to add advanced strategies to your arsenal, there's always something to learn and something to improve on. And now you can access the same knowledge that professional traders receive with Market Rebellion's Trading Education. I'm Bill Johnson, Head of Options Education here at Market Rebellion, and we've assembled a comprehensive curriculum based on decades of real trading experience, covering everything you need to know about trading options from beginner to advanced. We go way beyond the nuts and bolts of options theory to teach you how to apply specific trading strategies and the techniques needed to adapt your trades when markets shift. Regardless of your goals, you'll gain access to the education you need with easy-to-consume lessons so you can learn to trade with confidence, enhance your knowledge, and master the practical skills required for market success. So please join us for in-depth trading education only from Market Rebellion. And good afternoon once again to all of our market rebels. It's that time again. And Stu, been kind of a topsy-turvy market here the last few days.
Hey, that's why we do what we do.
That's why we do what we do. But it got me to thinking, and I'm sure you've stumbled onto this in your coaching sessions. I know we get the question a lot in Q&A, but a lot of people say, hey, you and Stu talk about calls being insurance. And sometimes Stu uses this analogy of which floor, like an elevator, which floor where do you want to get off? You don't want to ride the stock to zero. Where do you want to get off? That's kind of your strike of the call. But then other people say, all right, I get that. It sounds like it's insurance. But if I buy a call and the stock might only tick down 25 cents, and then I lose 100% of my premium. And that sounds really risky to me. So which is it? And so it's a good question. There is an answer to it. Doesn't seem like there is, at least not a good one, but there's a very good answer. So we're gonna tackle the question here: long calls, speculation, or insurance. Okay. So I want everybody out there to think, what's your answer? What do you think, that they're speculative, or do you think that they're insurance? Or maybe a little bit of both. So here's your question for this week. Here's our Chalk Talk question. For anybody who's new, little thought question to think about during the presentation. We'll answer it for you at the end, but just something to kind of get the conversation started. So you bought a $100 call. Doesn't really matter what the expiration date is or what price you paid, which is why I didn't put it in there.
100 strike price, right? You're talking about
100 strike. Yep.
Okay.
Question is, are you hedging or speculating? And again, sometimes people say, well, you and Stu always say that it's an insurance policy, but then other times it seems like with just a very small adverse stock price movement, or maybe not enough of a beneficial stock price movement, I end up losing 100% of my premium. So it seems highly risky. And it's a good question. It's a good thought. And that's what we want to talk about here. And the answer, we have to dig a little bit deeper, like we typically do with the better questions, comes down to a formula called put-call parity.
It's one of my favorite. This is one of my favorite formulas.
As a floor trader, you probably lived by this thing, didn't you?
This is how I learned to trade options, Bill.
Yeah, that's exactly. I agree. And what it is, for anybody who might be new, it's a formula. We'll look at it in a moment, but it really shows a connection among stock, calls, and puts. There is a relationship that kind of binds all of these. And parity is really just a fancy word for equivalence. And so if you have in economics, there's things like covered interest arbitrage parity or covered interest parity. We have put call parity. There's all these different types of parity conditions. And this is just one of many, but it's the one that the options traders know all too well, or at least should. Now, here's the kicker. I'm going to kind of give away the punchline at the beginning. Most people, if they're they've taken some advanced classes. I know everybody in our Q&A knows it. There is a formula for it, but there's technically two formulas. And this is a thing that most people don't know. And so depending on the assumptions, options may be considered as an insurance policy or as speculative positions. This goes for puts as well. I'm just going to talk about the calls. I think everybody gets the idea that a put option can be an insurance policy against stock. It's not so easy to see with the call options.
No.
So that's what we're going to start with here. So here is one version. This is the one that most traders learn. Stock plus put minus a call equals 0.
Can I throw something out here?
Of course you can.
People to kind of think about while you're doing this, because I know where you're going here. So think about this, everyone. Like Bill just said, if you own a put against a stock position, that's pretty obvious that you're insuring that position. But on the call side of it, ask yourself the question, what am I insuring?
Yeah.
Right. If you have the put, you know that you're like kind of by default, right? You know that you're insuring the stock. Why?
Right.
Because you have the stock.
Right.
But on the call side of the equation, you don't have the stock. You have a right to have the stock. So ask yourself, as Bill is talking here, as he and I are talking, what is it that I am actually insuring, if in fact I am insuring something with the call?
Yep. And some people would say, well, you're insuring short shares of stock, and that would be one possibility. But that's not really that interesting, because it's just looking at the opposite side of this.
That's the other side of the trade.
Exactly. We want to dig a little deeper.
Or are you not insuring? In which case, maybe you're really speculating.
Right. And actually, those are good comments, because that's really where we're heading, and that's really how we answer this question. So before we get started, as always, please remember marketrebellion.com/get started. Wonderful website. No need for emails, opt-ins, text messages, codes, everything else. Just log in, and just go to that website and you can get all kinds of training tutorials, articles, and things to help you get a much better grasp of what options are and how they work. So it's a great resource. So please check us out there. So let's start with the long call. And we're going to use our formula here. And there are 6 basic synthetic positions. We could look at a long stock. Right, here's stock, here's our long put and our short call. That's what these signs mean. You're long shares of stock, you are long a put, and you are short a call. And that really nets out to nothing. That's why we can put a 0 there. But if we...
And real quick here, people, if you have a put, you have a right? Owners have puts, sellers have obligations. So if you own a put against having an obligation, at the end of the day, one of them has to come true, right? I mean, it's, one's if one's in the money, the other's out of the money. That one's in the money, the other one's out of the money. So, whether you're short the call and you get a sign and you have to deliver the stock, or whether you're long the put and you sell the stock, look, it's kind of the same thing, right? You're selling the stock either way to get the cash.
Yep. So the thing that we want to look at here, we could obviously solve for, there's 6 basic positions. We could solve for a long stock position, a long put, or a short call. We could also do the opposite. We could look for a long call, short put, or a short stock. So those are the 6 basic synthetics. Now we can also get fancy. We could combine all of these, and as we'll find out, we could call as a treasury bill. This is sometimes called a synthetic T-bill. There's lots of synthetic positions, but they can all be spun off from this starting position. So let's, just for the example, do a long call. All right, so we're trying to figure out what is a synthetic long call. Now remember what a synthetic means. It looks, acts, behaves like something else, but it's made from other, or it looks, acts, behaves like a call, but it's made from other positions. So let's look at this. If we're trying to figure out what is a synthetic long call, well, I don't see a long call in here anywhere. But we can, if you remember a little bit of basic algebra, we can add a C to the left side and to the right. And we can get that plus C by itself over here. Now, an easier way, I like to just visualize it. If you think of these as little puzzle pieces, we put our finger on the C, we just drag it to the other side of the equals, and when we do, we have to change the sign.
Which is the same thing as what Bill just said.
It's the same thing. You're just mathematically adding C to both sides. So
what
take
you
a look
have
what
to
we have.
side, you have to do to the other, right, Bill? So you just put the plus C against the minus C, and you come out with 0, which is
Come
what
up with
that
0.
is right now. And the other side, you'll have with the plus C.
Yep. So on the left-hand side, we have stock plus put. We have an equal sign plus C. So that's telling us that the combination of stock and a long put is a synthetic equivalent to a long call.
Right.
And that just means, just like the word synthetics, it looks, acts, feels, behaves like a long call, but it's made from something different. And one of the characteristics you're going to find out about synthetics, if you're trying to find out a synthetic call, call cannot be in the answer. If you're trying to solve for a long call, we know that a long put has to be in the answer. So we can see that we just would have to delta hedge that with some positive deltas, and we've got a long call. Mm-hmm. So what this really means is that if we look at a long call at the risk graph by itself, we all know we get the bend right there at 100.
Right.
Unlimited gains, limited downside. That's the insurance policy kicking in right there. But if we look at stock plus put, look at that. Can you tell those parts too?
Negative.
They are exactly the same. That's why they're synthetic equivalents. They're going to have the same Greeks, delta, gamma, theta, all of your Greeks. They have the same risk reward profiles. So we would say typically the 2 combination or the multi combination is the synthetic version of a call. I know you and I will typically say a call is a synthetic version of that, which I think mathematically is true. But most of the books are going to say that the multi-legged position is the synthetic version of the single leg.
Yeah, they're actually synthetic versions of one another.
That's the way I think that makes the most sense. They're just 2 different ways of accomplishing the same thing.
And everyone on that bottom red graph, look, if you're getting lost on that, the bend, that it looks like a hockey stick, that's how the books describe it, the bend to the left, why is that there? Because that's where you own the right to sell it.
Right to walk away. Or in this case for the put, right, the right to sell.
The right to sell the stock. I mean, that's what the put is, right? It's the right to sell the stock. So if you can sell it at 100 and you own it at 100, then it's just nothing. And the difference between 5 and 0 is what you paid for the put.
Yeah, right? Very good. So the thing is, the reason that these are synthetics is not only because they look the same in terms of the risk graph, but let's look at some examples. Let's say we have 2 traders. Maybe here's Stu with the stock plus the $100 put. I'm going to take the $100 call.
Yeah, I wouldn't be that.
For all stock prices below 100, what's going to happen? Well, Stu is going to exercise that put. So if the stock's at 99 or at 0 or anywhere in between, he's going to exercise that put and get the strike. He will be sitting on $100 cash. Mm-hmm. What happens to my call? Goes out worthless. Now, let's say the stock is greater than 100. Okay, it's above the strike. And let's just pick some examples. Let's say the stock is 101.
Okay.
Stu's put goes out worthless, but he's holding stock worth 101.
Now, don't get confused, people. The stock's 101 and the put is the right to sell it at 100.
Right.
So
we don't want it anymore.
Doesn't do any good. It's not worth anything to anyone.
Right.
Because it gives you the right to do something, to sell something, to sell an asset, if you want to call the stock an asset, which I would, below where it's actually trading. So if you really wanted to sell it, you would just go out and sell it at 101. What do you need to put for?
Right. And that's why it'll be trading for 0 at expiration.
At expiration.
Yep. Now, what about my $100 call over here? Well, if I have the right to pay 100 and the stock is 101, my call is worth $1.
Has to be.
Right. Now, what if the stock is 102? Again, Stu's put goes out worthless. He's holding shares worth 102. My call is worth 2. So the thing to notice here is that look at the change in Stu's position. It went from 101 to 102. It increased by $1. Look at the change in my position. Went from 1 to 2.
Well, let's do a little sidebar just for 10 seconds here. So why does it have to be worth 1 or 2, it being the call? Think about this, everyone. The stock is 101 and your right to purchase it is 100. So it has to be $1. Same thing with 102. It has to be $2. And if it's not $2, that means there's free money floating around. Because if it was, say, 102 and the call was 150, then you now own the right to pay 100 plus 150, which would be 101.50, and the actual asset is trading at 102.
Mhm.
So the market, in its infinite wisdom, is not really going to allow people to just come in and steal $50,
Nope.
right? So the balance of nature comes in and says, well, the call has to be higher, or, I mean, theoretically, the stock would have to go down to meet the call, but what's really going to happen is the call is going to go up to meet the stock, and then the call would be $2.
Yep. So the thing to notice here is that Stu's position increased by $1. My position increased by $1. But notice that the total value is different. Stu's worth 101. My position's worth 1. With the stock at 102, Stu's position is worth 102. My position is worth 2. So now the question is, are they equal? Well, in terms of the total value, no, we're off by $100. In terms of the changes, we are equal. And that is the key word. If you're trying to track the changes, not the total values, then we can use this put call parity formula where we say that it equals 0. So to make that point, let's go to a table. So let's say this is Stu over here in gray. This is me over here in blue in the $100 call. These are different stock prices. So with the stock at 85, his put's worth 15, right? So he's got stock worth 85 plus a put worth 15. The total value is 100.
Same idea as that call on the stock at 101 and 102, right? 15, the put is the right to sell it. Where at 100, it's actually trading at 15. It has to be worth $15.
$15. So what I want you to focus on are these two columns. Notice that the values are different. Stu's are like at least 100, but the changes are the same. So watch this. Let's say the stock goes from 85 to 90. Stu's position went up from 100 to 100. It had 0 change. What happened to mine? No change. It was worthless before, worthless at 90. If the stock goes from 90 to 95, Stu's position goes from 100 to 100, or a change of 0. My call goes to a change of 0. Stock goes to 100. Stu's position has changed by 0, so has mine. Notice how they're tracking the same changes.
Mm-hmm.
Stock goes to 105. Stu's position goes from 100. Now that put goes out worthless at 105, and he's holding shares at 105. So his position has increased by 5. My position has increased by 5. That's what it means to track the changes. But again, the total values are very different. See, Stu's like a minimum of 100. I'm over here, minimum of 0. But they're tracking the changes. So that's really what we're talking about when we're looking at this first version of put call parity. All right, we're just tracking the changes. Now, this version actually has a name. It is called a mimicking portfolio. And that is the one that we looked at. Stock plus put equals a call. We could also do different variations, but that's one version of it. And so call options mimic long stock plus put. They are not mirror images. So what we mean by this is that call options track the changes of the stock plus put portfolio, but they do not track the total value. All right, so one of the things that I always teach traders with this is think of like when you hear a parrot like Bongo, and we say that he says hello, but is he really speaking? No, he mimics speech. And that's really, I think, where this term comes from. It kind of has a resemblance of the portfolio in the fact that it tracks the changes, but it's not an exact replica. So now the question is, well, how can we make a call option exactly mirror the stock plus put? How would we do that? And to do that, we would have to add a bond. And if we do that, now we get what's called a replicating portfolio. And the replicating portfolio, as you've probably guessed, is a true mirror image, a true Xerox copy.
Bill, that looks like Roscoe a little bit.
It kind of does, doesn't it? Kind of the same attitude of him. It's going to be like a Xerox copy. Not only will the changes be the same, but the values will also be. Everything is exactly the same. So let's go see how that works. And before we do, quick reminder, check us out, marketrebellion.com/get started. All kinds of great materials there. Very much like the stuff we bring you on Coach's Corner, all for free.
And what did Bill just say? Like, remember what the difference was? $100?
Yeah.
Well, think about a bond, right? $100.
Where,
Yeah.
yep, what do you think the value of that bond's going to be? It's a little clue. So let's take a look here. The bond that you would have to have or to post is equal to the exercise price, at least at expiration of the option. So let's say that we have the $100 call and we add a $100 bond. Right. So this is now not just the call by itself, it's a call plus a bond that matures to 100. So what that means, if it's a discount bond, I might pay $95 for it today. But when we get to expiration or maturity of the bond, but expiration of the option, it will be worth 100. If interest rates are zero, you would just need $100 in cash. But the point is, you would have to put some cash aside that by the time you reach option expiration, you will have an amount of cash equal to the exercise price. All right, that's the key. You have to end up with $100 cash at expiration. So that's where this bond is coming from. Okay, so Stu, now that we've taken a look at a portfolio where I actually hold a bond, how is that going to change things? All right, so let's go back to what we looked at before. Over here is Stu, stock plus the 100 put. Over here is me, the 100 call, but I've also got a bond. Now let's say the stock is below 100. What happens? Stu ends up with $100 cash. He exercises that put and gets the 100 exercise. What do I have? Do I end up at zero this time, Stu?
I don't think so, Bill. It looks like to me like you got a bond.
My bond is going to mature to $100. That was by design.
And of
So
course,
now we are exactly the same. If the stock is above 100, anywhere, Stu's put goes out worthless. He is long shares. But now, how am I going to get to be long shares here?
I think you got to exercise the call.
Ah, exactly. I've got $100 cash, and I have the right to pay 100.
Listen, little quick note here. You don't, this is not about whether you have to exercise or not exercise.
Correct.
That's not what's going on here. You
Right.
can always opt to exercise. So
Correct.
for this discussion, we're kind of saying like, it's trying to follow the money. The option money being that it's a right will turn into the stock when you exercise it, because that's
Correct.
like, that's its given right to be able to turn into stock. That's what it is.
Right. So that's what we're showing here, is that I have the ability to always equal Stu. And it's because of this bond. Right. So notice now, not only will the changes be the same, but the values are exactly the same. Stock could be 120. I've got the right to pay 100. I exercise, I've got long shares of stock.
So there's
Right?
your hint,
Stu said,
everyone.
even if you decide just to close it, we know it has to be worth at least 20.
Yeah,
But what we're trying to show is that the stock
at 120.
plus the bond, or the call plus the bond portfolio, will exactly mirror the stock plus the put. That's the key to see.
Yeah, and that's kind of like your answer here. I mean, got to read between the lines, everyone. If you have the stock and the put and you're trying to say, well, it's really the call, well, is it really the call without the bond?
Correct.
You
And so
know,
now let's rewrite our put call parity formula. This is version number 2.
Mhm.
We're going to take stock plus put minus call, but instead of saying equals 0, it has to all equal the present value of that bond. So again, if this is a $100 face, maybe it equals 95 or 98, depending on the time to expiration and or interest rates. But it's going to equal a bond. And so
Bill,
that's why sometimes people say that the stock plus put minus a call is a synthetic T-bill.
yes,
That's going to behave just like a bond.
So this looks eerily familiar to something called the conversion,
It does.
which is just the value of the money moving forward, right?
That's right.
It's just the
So if we look at this now, if we use this for our formula and we want to know what a synthetic call is, we do what we did before. I move the call to the other side, change the sign, but notice it's not just a call by itself. It's a call plus bond. And what this does, it actually shows us a very interesting insight. The call is actually ensuring my cash
This is cool.
against a missed market rally.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about
Yep.
what's going on here. If you
Yep.
buy,
So if I say, you know what, I think the market's going to really crash, let me convert to cash. Doesn't necessarily have to be a bond, but I'm going to put everything into cash. But just in case it takes off for a little bit of money, relatively speaking, I can at least insure against that. And
because
so now if we have
I get to be in the stock as it's going up via the call,
via the call,
and I
correct.
had my cash on the sidelines,
I got the cash on the sidelines.
or in
Now
other
there's
words,
other
cash going in.
strategies. In fact, John and Pete talk about it in their most recent book. A strategy, especially when interest rates are higher, but I can remember when traders would come in with, let's say, $500,000 or $1 million. They buy a 5-year T-bill or note and buy it at a discount because it's out 5 years, so it's a pretty deep discount. They take that excess cash and buy, let's see, S&P 500 calls with it. And if for some reason the S&P 500 calls go kaput, what
They do
happens?
bond.
They at least get their $500,000 back or their $1 million back. They're really speculating with the interest.
Yeah.
And so these are really interesting insights once we incorporate the bond. However,
Listen to what he said, speculating with the interest versus speculating with the principal.
that's right.
See,
And
that's
this is where things can be a very difficult, why we believe that you have to understand the nuances, because somebody might tell you that a call option is a form of insurance, but it depends on what we're insuring. So let's take a look now at some of the details. Over on the left is Stu, stock plus put. Over on the right is me in blue with the call plus a bond. So if the stock is down at 85, Stu's put's worth 15, his total position's worth 100. My call is worthless, but my bond matures to 100, so my total is 100. So notice all the way down the line.
And of course,
Not only do they,
this is assuming no default risk.
yeah, of course. This is, so not only do they track the changes, but they also track the identical values. All right, so the stock goes up to 90. Stu's portfolio has zero change. My portfolio has zero change. Stock goes up, the changes are the same. Stock goes up again, changes are the same. Goes to 105, what happens? Stu picks up 5 points. I pick up 5 points, but not only do we both pick up 5 points, he's worth 105 and I'm worth 105. Everything is the same. So the thing to understand is that there are two forms of put-call parity. All right, we've got the stock plus put minus the call, but when we swing this over to this side, this is the replicating portfolio. So now here is the grand finale. If you have stock plus put, I think everybody agrees, yeah, that's insurance. I can see that that's a form of insurance against the stock. If I have call plus bond, it's insurance against what? A missed market rally. I'm insuring my cash against a missed market rally. But watch what happens if I say, well, Stu, why would I pay the $95 or $98 for that bond? Why don't I just buy the call, use the leverage? I can do that. And that's why most traders use the mimicking portfolio. But if you're not going to include the bond, what are you insuring? Nothing. This now becomes speculation. So the moral of the story is that if you are buying a call and you never have intention of saying, hey, it's gone against me, but I've got cash, I can at least buy the stock. I can buy it at the lower price. That's part of my maybe a plan B. It's leaning far more towards insurance. If you're buying the call by itself and just hoping that it goes up, and if not, you lose everything, that's speculation. And it simply comes down to the fact that there are two different put call parity formulas.
This kind of reminds me of the idea that's floated all the time about selling puts for money, selling puts for income here. When we like to, we tell people, look, it's a trade. But the thing is, if you sell a put and trying to collect the money, yeah, you might collect the money, you might not. But if you're collecting the money, whatever happens, you have to be prepared to buy the stock.
It helps. It makes a big difference in the outcome.
Really,
yes.
It separates you from,
yep.
Am I just, throwing
hoping and speculating, or am I using it as a way to acquire shares?
Yeah, yeah, and that mindset really makes a difference in your outlook and how you create strategy to invest with.
In
And
fact, we just
well,
had a situation with that in our instant cash flow, didn't we?
we absolutely, I was just exactly
And what has happened in a matter of a few days?
a couple of days, 2 days,
Back up above water easily. Whereas if you
easy.
had sold that put, you're under.
You're just
And
out
it's the
and
same
done.
thing here with the calls.
Yeah,
If you have that cash and are willing to take the shares once it's gone against you, keeping in mind that's allowing you to scale in at lower prices, you are insuring cash against a missed market rally.
I
That's a
think
whole
we
lot different than just speculating with the call.
I think we used to call it on the floor grasping, grabbing a winner and something like eh, she. How did we say it? Something about like taking a winner and making it into a loser, or
Oh, yeah.
grabbing victory from the jaws of defeat. But
From
we
the
actually
jaws of defeat. Yeah.
like grabbing defeat from the jaws of victory. That's kind of what's going on a little bit here. It's
Right.
like how you
So
gonna
now hopefully that gives you some wonderful insights why again why you have to on a bigger level why you have to be so careful with options and strategies. There's a lot of really small nuances that can make these things 180 degrees opposite. So back to our question, you bought a $100 call. Are you hedging or speculating? Your answer, Stu?
kind of depends.
Everybody knows in our Q&A that is pretty much always the answer. Why?
Look,
Because it does.
theoretically, are we all putting up the bond?
Probably
Sort of
not. Yeah.
have the money in your account. It's like, what do you intend to do with the money?
What do you intend to do with the money? Which is still putting up a bond
Yeah,
mathematically, correct?
in a way, in a way.
Yeah, you're saying I've got the cash. I'm willing to take those shares, but most people don't. They just buy the call. Sometimes it's all the money they have. It goes up in smoke. Yeah, that's going to be
All right.
highly speculative, even though people will still say that a call is a form of insurance. So hopefully that solves the mystery for many of you, one of the many options mysteries that are out there that we love to talk about. Please join us for Q&A if you're interested in really taking your options trading to a higher level. And if not, we hope to see you here for future Coach's Corner, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And Stu, thanks for joining us. We got to get Scotty on next week.
Yeah, we'll do that. Let's do that.
We'll do that. And we'll see you all next Thursday, and we'll talk then.
See you, everyone.